Hello and welcome to this edition of A Conversation With. I'm Jim Marshall of the New Bedford Cable Network. Exciting show today. Renee Ledbetter, who is the president of the NAACP of Greater New Bedford, is joining us today. Thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I know you are
Thank
so busy. It was great talking to you on the phone. We haven't met, and I was very excited to have the show here today. The reason I had the show, as I was telling you on the phone, is recently, not this weekend, but the past weekend, the NAACP, the national chapter, had their meeting, their national convention in Boston, and I was thinking, wow, what a great time to have you come in just to talk about the organization and the goals locally, the goals nationally, and just talk about some of the things that you're seeing and dealing with as well. So again, thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate it. To start, I mean, you started the presidency here for the local chapter in January. You've been on the job for
officially
8 months, right? Exactly.
Yes.
So, how's it going?
It's a learning curve. It's a lot to learn. It's a lot to take in. Going to the national convention helped put a lot of things in perspective for me. One of the national board members told me just start small. Take one thing at a time and do it well, and then go on to the next. So it was good advice because I have big dreams and I want big things to happen. There's a lot of things that need to happen in our community. Right now, our main topics are mental health, housing, and education. So those are three things that we're working on. So start one thing at a time. We have different committees, not enough people.
How is the health of the local chapter? Do you have a lot of people? I mean, a lot of members?
Yeah. But not a lot of active members.
Okay.
So we have a lot of people that have memberships.
Okay. And what, for people who don't know, I mean, people say here at NAACP, what is the goal of the job of the NAACP in your eyes?
The goal of, and the job of our branch is to make sure that all people are treated equally. Make sure that everyone's civil rights are not being violated, and just to make sure there's racial equity all the way around.
You were, when you and I were talking prior to the interview here, you were talking about just your history and how you grew up in a house that valued public service, and I think that's sort of a great story for people to hear. This is something that you're very passionate about, but you were passionate because you started seeing it as a young child, really.
Yes. I grew up with my aunt and uncle who are very active in the community. My uncle did a lot with drum corps back in the day, and my aunt was very active in the church. And I had uncles that were active in the community. One of my uncles was the treasurer of the city at one time. So it's something that I saw growing up. A lot of the clubs, the Bisca Club, it used to be the Mariners Club, the Vets, the Cape Verdean Vets, and the band club. A lot of my family members were board members of those clubs, and so I saw a lot of the service, the community service, the social justice. Growing up in church, that's what I learned, social justice, and how to help others.
Do you find a lot of people, because obviously the NAACP, it's a volunteer organization.
Yes.
Do you find people, and I ask this to others too, are people volunteering?
Some people do. We have a good group, strong group of volunteers, small but mighty. But it's a lot of work, so we always need working people. Right.
And you, as you said, you're dealing with so many issues, diverse issues, really. Right. That the expertise is so important to an organization like yours. You want to pull people from different backgrounds.
Right, and our national convention, one of the messages I received as a local branch president was to focus on our issues in our local area. And right now, mental health is a big issue that is plaguing our black men and some women, but it's been a big problem for black and brown men in the last year or so.
And kids.
and kids.
And kids, yeah.
So those are things that they asked us to do, is to focus on the issues that we have at home. And then we also meet as a state conference, and we meet as a national every so many months.
Do you find that, and I won't go through the names, you mentioned some great names off camera about some of the people who were part of the NAACP that you saw growing up that were
So Lee Charlton.
so instrumental. We've had Lee on the program, so instrumental. Do you find that it's hard because of the times? I mean, you've got social media, you've got so many distractions right now, it seems, for people in general, I'm saying now, that it's hard for people to participate, not just in this organization, but any organization. Are you just seeing that in general in your day-to-day?
Yeah, I don't even think it's just technology. I think there are so many people that are tired, and they want to see change, but they want to see it instantly. And when that doesn't happen, it gets discouraging. I also think that people don't have time during their day because they're working 1 or 2 jobs in order to pay for the mortgages or the rents that are outrageous. And we're struggling to live and fight for, shelter and things that we need every single day, whether it's health care. And I think that's part of the problem. I don't think people don't want to be involved. I think they don't know how to get involved.
Yeah, that's a good point, yeah.
And
the instant gratification you were talking about
right.
is something that's,
right.
I
they
think
want
younger
things to-
generations are like that.
Yeah, they want things to happen instantly. But I also think that it's a matter of not knowing what to work on. Because even me, as a president, I'm like, what do I do? Where do I go? Like, what do we work on first? And I rely on my executive committee to help guide the branch. Because the one thing I was taught by Lee Charlton was the president does not decide, they preside. The executive committee decides. So it's the members and the branch members that decide the direction of the branch.
How big is the reach for the local chapter? I mean, it's the the NAACP of Greater New Bedford. How far do you go out? You branch out?
We've branched out as far as Rochester to Taunton to
Really?
Fall River.
That big, huh?
Yes.
So there's a lot of folks that are involved from the different organizations.
Freetown.
Yeah.
Can't forget Freetown.
I would assume like Wareham's probably in there too.
No, I think that they're Plymouth County.
Okay.
So we try to stick with Bristol.
Are there a lot of local chapters in the state?
Yes.
There are. Okay.
Yes. There's a good. I can't list them all.
No, but I
know
didn't.
we have Brockton, we have Worcester, we have Boston.
So one on the Cape in a
North
sense?
Shore, we have Cape Cod, Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah.
There's several all over the place.
And as you said before, to me, off camera, New Bedford's one of the oldest ones around, really.
Right.
So there's a lot of history and tradition that goes with
Yes.
this organization.
Right. So when I think about the history, like Elizabeth Carter Brooks was one of the founders of this chapter, this branch.
And for some people, they may not even know that. I mean, she's got a school named after her in the city.
Right.
But people might ask, well, who is she?
And she was one of the first women presidents. There was 5. Dr. Bruce Rose, who was president for a while. I worked as a youth council advisor when I worked under Lee Charlton and Dr. Bruce Rose. And he pointed out to me I'm not the first woman president, but I'm the first Cape Verdean woman president.
What do you see locally here? I mean, it does seem to me, as you were talking about mental health, housing seems to be just a huge issue right now, everywhere.
Everywhere.
I mean, from Rochester to
California.
exactly. It just, I mean,
It's everywhere.
it's a tough issue to deal with.
Right.
And there's no easy answers, really, because it seems one of the biggest problems is there's just not enough houses.
Right. I don't know what the solution is. So,
I don't think anybody does. That's the thing.
I just know that it's something we need to continuously work on together. One of the themes of the convention was thriving together, and which is so true, because in order for us to do anything, We can't do it alone. We have to do it together. That means including politicians, officials, whether they're public or private, CEOs, community members, activists. We all have to come together and figure out a solution to help our people.
Do you see, because you've got history, you've talked to these people, do you find that, and I'm generalizing now in this time, that it's harder now to get things done because, I guess, maybe the polarization or what have you, that people aren't talking to each other, or maybe even better, people aren't listening to each other?
I'm going to say both. I think it's a little bit of both. And I think it's not done in malice or anything. I don't think people are saying, I don't want to hear you. I think it's more of, I can't listen because I want something to be done. So it's hard for people to hear when there's background noise with people not having a place to live, not having food to eat, not having proper medical care, not being able to pay for their education. There are so many different needs that are unmet. So I don't even think it's that people can't hear, it's just that it's hard to hear. Mm-hmm. With everything that's happening around us, environmental justice, all those things that the national NAACP is asking us to support them in, all those things are loud. Those are loud needs and loud things. And like we talked about earlier, that instant gratification, it can't happen all at once. It can't happen instantly.
In everything, in a sense, it's a slow, and I think other people would say the same thing. Things just don't happen. It's a grind to get. I mean, change happens, but it's not instantly. Right.
And I think with the NAACP, the expectations are that we do something.
Just in general. I mean,
in
topic with it could be any topic, but that's what people are saying.
The NAACP does not. The local level branches are not able to litigate, represent anyone in court. Our job is to advocate.
Yep.
On the local level.
I don't think people know that either.
No, they don't. I think people expect us to go to court and, like one of the TV shows and, fight for justice. And we do fight for justice, but we do it in an advocacy way.
And unlike TV too, it's, 48 minutes is not going to solve the whole issue. I mean.
And if you have an executive committee of 12 people cannot solve it for the whole greater New Bedford area.
Just on a side note too, as we were talking about the local chapter, and I think it's a great point that you made, you're looking for everybody to get involved in the NAACP. Doesn't matter who.
Anyone who cares about civil rights, anyone who cares about working for equality and making sure that every single person is treated with human dignity.
Portuguese, Hispanic, white, black, it doesn't matter. You're looking for, and I think that's a great message to send, that it's not a particular group, it's everybody.
Right. I mean, we even have a youth council that are active, and their job is to be educated and to bring back situations to the local branch so we can help advocate for them. And sometimes they advocate for themselves. For instance, a group of youth from my church were complaining about the school lunch, and they happened to be on the youth council as well. And so I said, well, what are you going to do about it? You're just going to complain? So they asked if they could speak with a school committee member at our church. So I got in touch with him. He came, he listened. He went back and got the superintendent, the current one, the interim. He came back and he listened. And so one of the solutions was for them to do taste testing in the summer to figure out which vendors are best to use, because if they're complaining about the food, they may have taste buds like the rest of the youth. So that's one of the things. I'm not really quite sure where we are with that yet, but at the end of it all, they learned how to advocate for themselves, not just complain.
And you talked to me about the history of the NAACP in general, and that it was a group of people that founded the organization from all different
backgrounds.
Yeah, different backgrounds.
Yep. Yes.
Um,
I couldn't name them all.
no, but it's still a great message to send that this is,
Right.
we're all in this together.
Yeah, I mean, the NAACP was founded for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. It didn't say for only colored people can belong to it. It didn't say that. That's not the mission.
One of the things we were talking about on the phone, and just from what I read and what I saw in the news about the national convention, a lot of focus on young people. And when I say young, I'm not just talking about teens. I'm talking 35. It seemed like 35 and younger. It just seemed that seemed to be a big emphasis at that event. Would you agree?
I think so. There's a big emphasis on next generation and the youth in college. We also have a college chapter. UMass Dartmouth has a college chapter that is our part of our, they're not really part of our branch, they have their own chapter, but they're part of our circle, our trio. So we have the youth in college division at UMass Dartmouth. So there's a big emphasis on getting young people involved so that way they're ready to take over when some of us are no longer able.
And I'm comparing, in a sense, apples and oranges, but you look at like some of the veterans organizations around town that have closed because today's veterans aren't joining, like the World War I, or World War II, Korea, Vietnam. Those guys aren't joining anymore. So some of them are closing, and obviously, in a sense, it's like the same thing. It's your organization is still looking to keep it going, but you need the next generations to participate.
Right, you need them to participate and learn, because it's a lot of work. I'm still learning. I know people think that they could just do it, and it doesn't work like that. It's a lot. There's a lot of compliance that we have to follow. There's when we're part of national, so we're part of a bigger brand. And on the state level, there's certain things like Veterans Affairs that we can only take up with the state on the state level. So there's local things that we can do, but not state things and not national things. We do that together as
An umbrella, a bigger organization, yeah.
Right.
You were mentioning, which I thought was interesting too, you were talking about like the 40 to 60-year-old member of the organization. About they're sort of in the middle, yeah.
The middle age is kind of forgotten. Everybody has an emphasis on, we have to make sure that our older people are taken care of. We have to make sure that they're passing down the baton to the younger generation, but they're thinking 35 and under. What happens to those in the middle?
And that age demographic is the one that's working, that has families, or not retirement yet, but and you're still dealing with pretty much the same issues as a lot of the 35 and under are, but it's just
some of our families are 30, 35, some of our children.
Right. So it's just interesting that you said that. You're sort of in the, I don't want to say between a rock and a hard place, but you are sort of just like, okay. And I would assume that's kind of like that all the time.
Right. I mean, I think we are, I look at it as we're the common ground, the go-between. Like, we understand where the older generation is because they worked hard to get where they are and where they have brought different organizations. And we understand the younger generation wants to see change, and there's technology and there's new things happening. But then there's us that understand both sides.
All right, you're trying to marry the two, really.
Bring it together and try to make sure that everybody's can work on the same page.
Talk about, especially locally here, as you were talking about mental health, and we have a few minutes, but I want to just touch on your three things that you mentioned. Mental health. A lot of people come in and talk about COVID just did a number on mental health right now, and there is no easy answers. But what are some of the short-term things that you're looking at that aren't going to solve the problem, but will help people?
I think bringing awareness to it. Just having different people come and speak to community members about accessing mental health, clinicians, especially for men and men of color, Black and brown men there's a pride thing. Nobody wants to.
I was gonna, and I didn't mean to.
It's
I was gonna say, is part of the problem that people don't want to admit that they
Right,
have
it's
mental
a
health
stigma.
issues? Yeah.
Mental health has a stigma.
Yep.
So I think the short-term thing is to kind of get rid of that stigma.
Yeah.
For all, not just men, but anyone who is ashamed to go and seek the help that they may need. That's number one. Some people do get the help, but the healthcare system does not allow. They only allow so many appointments.
So many visits, yeah.
So many visits, and if you miss one, then you can't go back, or they cancel your subscription. I don't know what you call it, but they say
your coverage.
you're no longer
Yeah,
you can't be a patient anymore because you missed too many appointments. So I don't think COVID caused it. What I think COVID did was revealed it.
Yeah, in a large way too. And for kids as well. I mean, it seems kids are having more of a mental health issue right now following that, just not being in school.
Yeah, because of the trauma.
Right.
I mean, people don't realize not having a place to live is trauma. Not having anything to eat is trauma. Living next door and having shots fired all the time, that's trauma. So whether people want to call it trauma, mental health, whatever, it's something that needs to be addressed, and it needs to be put in the forefront in everyone's minds.
From your experience talking about housing, and we kind of touched upon it earlier, but housing, obviously a huge issue, and I've talked to the state reps about it. I know they've got some bills. I had Josh Amaral in here as the planning department talking about it. What are your hopes, I guess, when you look at housing? Just sort of immediate things. We're not going to build a lot of houses right off the start, so what do we, I don't know if it's more availability or the price of what's available, because the price seems to be prohibitive too.
The price is prohibitive, but they also need to be more creative and a little bit more innovative when it comes to housing. We have a lot of space in New Bedford that's empty. We have shopping centers that are empty. Those places can become houses, affordable housing areas that also have mental health like a clinic there for mental health, financial literacy, places where people can learn education and get like the whole wraparound services. So while they're learning how to live, because sometimes mental health gets in the way of us learning how to clean, cook, do basic things that we all take it for granted. We need to have a place that is able to offer those things, so that way eventually they can go off and purchase their own homes, and maybe the prices will drop of houses. And I mean, that's just a dream, but
Yeah, right now,
maybe
yeah.
the prices will drop, and maybe landlords won't be so greedy, because now the inventory is not like the biggest thing. The people, the customers, or the tenants become competitive for the tenants, so then the prices can drop.
As far as education goes, everybody, a lot of people talk about education, what have you. There's been a lot of success stories in New Bedford, and obviously the kids that are struggling. What is your hopes right now? What are you looking at as far as education goes?
I'm looking at young people, especially for what I do for work. I'm looking at young people being able to get into vocational schools where they learn a trade, because that market is failing. Not failing, but there's a low inventory in plumbers and carpenters. I'm looking at people being able to have pride in what they do for a living, and if that means trade school, or like before they had Kenyon Campbell. I don't know if you remember that.
Yep, the business school.
Right. Not everybody is college material. Not everybody's meant to go to college. I have 5 kids, and only 4 went to college. So does that mean that my 5th one is something wrong? No, that means he was interested in trade.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. And I think the message needs to be that education is what you make it, and it's okay if you want to be a carpenter, an engineer, a mechanic, a doctor, a lawyer, regardless of what you want to be. It's okay. No one, should be frowning down on that. I think kids they're under too much pressure now to be the best.
Yeah.
And we don't have to be the best. We just have to be the best of ourselves.
And opportunities, just in general.
Right. And we have tons of them.
Yeah.
Just got to take advantage of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It has flown by.
Yeah.
For people who have questions or want to talk to you or get in touch with the organization, what's the best way to do that?
They can email president at New Bedford NAACP.org.
For questions or whatever. And as you said, I think, circling back to kind of what we started, anybody's welcome.
Yes, anyone's welcome. Young people, older people, anyone who wants to make a difference and see everyone being treated with equality.
And as far as the commitment go, like meetings and what have you for the organization, are they monthly or
Yeah,
how does that work?
the third Thursday of every month
Okay.
is our general body meetings. It doesn't change unless there's a holiday. Of
Correct.
course, Thanksgiving.
Really? We're not meeting on Thanksgiving?
We're not meeting on
You
Thanksgiving.
can go to your house with dinner there. And as you said, there's subcommittees that you form out of the...
Anyone can get involved in the subcommittees.
Right.
Yes.
Well, it has been great talking to you. It was
Thank you for
very
having
nice to
me.
meet you finally, and hopefully we can do this again real soon.
Okay, thank you.
Alrighty. That's going to do it for this edition of A Conversation With. My thanks to Renee for joining us for the past half hour, and we hope to see you again. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you again soon.